Hello, everyone. It's great to be before you today. I'm really honored to be asked. With all the people in the area that could be asked to talk about this, I am honored to be here. Thank you. So we are talking about 6 glimpses of 2052. I'd like to think of it as, or being at ease with variety and uncertainty, because any of us that are thinking that we are truly the prophets of the future are already setting ourselves up for a fall. So be comfortable with that uncertainty, but really be comfortable with variety, because that's what the future will hold, and I'll be covering that in a couple ways. So first, it is a pleasure to be here, as I said, but I want to give 2 thank yous out particularly to Vince. Thank you for inviting me. As I said, it's wonderful to be here, and the time and commitment that it's taken to pull this together, I can't even imagine. So wonderful job. And then to all the participants, having been able, I'm sitting upstairs listening to and watching the show, it really, the intensity of ideas, I can't wait to have the panel discussion afterwards. So what am I going to discuss today? Before I get to that, I want to at least set up 2 quick disclaimers, maybe 3, because this is very fast. So they say that's 1. But the second one is, I am a realistic optimist. I truly have an optimistic view to the future, but I am not naive, and I know the struggles and the things that we all are that we confront daily. So what I'm thinking is, with that, understanding that, I still am optimistic to the future. And so the future that I'm presenting today and have discussed with many people, and I don't think many of you will actually even think some of it is brand new, is a hopeful future. This is what I hope will be the future in 2052. Second, I've been dubbed to talk about both architecture and engineering. I went to Georgia Tech, and so I'm able to do that. But I want to talk about, and it actually is a product of my education, is to think about both of those as 2 halves to the whole, and that whole being space. And space is the thing that truly connects us all together. It is where we live, where we work, where we play, where we worship, and yes, where we laugh and cry as well. So, today's talk is broken into 3 parts. The first part is going to provide a bit of an underpinning to the discussion that's going to happen in part 2, where I'm going to discuss the who, the where, and the how, because that's really where I think the majority of the change is going to happen. I will talk about why I think that in the first part of underpinnings, though, so I won't start now. And then lastly, I will go through a bunch of points, but I'm going to recap them really quickly at the end as to what that future may be. So let's get started. The future. Yes, there will be visually exciting spaces, objects, buildings, however we want to think about them in the future. That's for sure. But the future really does not lie in those visual exciting forms or spaces, as I've already alluded to. It will lie in the future of who is practicing, where we practice, and how we practice. Now, I want to define practice, and for this talk, I would say that practice is to work in the world in a meaningful way. Not just to work, but to work in a meaningful way. So I am a dean of the School of Architecture and Community Development, and we impart to our students to think about that means to lead in and adapt to a dynamically changing world. And that dynamically changing world is about both and, not either or. It's about the variety, not singularity. So, to read this paragraph real quickly, forget the fourthly, it's a 4th in a series. It is feasible that at some point in the future, recordings as such will no longer be produced at all, But the music, that music, will be supplied to the listener on request. After all, this is the principle of which radio works, but its shortcoming is that the listener cannot choose the program himself. You'll hear when this was done, excuse the gendered language here, when this was written. In theory, it should be possible to develop a sort of gigantic jukebox from which the listener could choose that music he wants, or at the time, maybe say they want, at the time they want it, working either by telephone lines or by cable or the airwaves. Payment is levied subsequently, blah, blah, blah. This was written in 1969, 1970, right? Thinking about you could talk about that's Spotify, that's iTunes, that's Apple Music, or Amazon, right? These things already are present now, right? So, but thinking about that gigantic jukebox. So put that in the frame of how we're talking today. The words we're using may not be the words in the future, but in a different way. And then this image was done in 1901 or 1910. They're still debating when it was done. And it was a vision of the year 2000, where books are being shredded and we're all now wearing headphones and thinking and learning in that way. So let's get to the what. Now I said, wait a minute, we're talking about the who, the where, and the how. But I do want to quickly discuss about the what, because that is important, and many of you in the room do the what, and we need to focus on what that will be. So 2022 we'll see, and I think we're doing this already, so this is a continuation, an evolution, not necessarily a revolution. The decarbonation of buildings. We are already moving there, getting to that point. That partially means that materials will be reused. They will be made from reused material. Obviously, we're doing that. And there will be new and existing, but new zero carbon materials. There will be a better symbiotic relationship between humans, environments, and the space buildings, or however we want to say. What I mean by symbiotic is that the buildings and the humans together with the environment are more of a unit. We will work closer together than just the buildings being air conditioned to us that ignores what's going on outside and vice versa. We will become more the relationship, the building will become like the suit dress that we wear. That will become a very different kind of context. But that is talking about architecture as a thing, the thing we are in right now, the space we're in. That's kind of the dilemma that we have when we talk about the discipline of architecture and engineering that connects to architecture. And this underlies the talk that I'm giving today. Architecture is both a thing and it is a body of knowledge. That body of knowledge is something that can be considered differently, so than the thing itself. When you walk into a science lab, where do you point to the science? Is it the scientist? Is it the lab coat? Is it the test tubes? No, those are the things that accomplish making the science happen, but it's a body of knowledge. Architecture is the same thing. It's both and. It's the thing and the body of knowledge. This is important, because no physical thing, as much as we all want to try, and I'm just as deliberate, point to that is architecture and that is not. No, it's all a part of the body of knowledge. So I like to show my mind map afterwards, so that's the mind map you just went through of the first part. Okay, the who, the where, and the how. So I dealt a little bit with the what because I still felt like it's important. But the who, mosaics. What is a mosaic? A mosaic is an image created from tiny tiles that have their own individual shape, size, and color. Think about that tile. Individually, it has its own identity, but it still creates a bigger image. Think about that in relationship of humans and communities. We can be individuals and community together. We don't have to reject our individuality to be a part of the community and vice versa. Again, both and, not either or. So a true mosaic of people working with the mosaic of communities that we have is our future and has to be our future. Because like minds, we know the cliche, like minds seldom bring about new ways of thinking. So we have to surround ourselves by a variety of minds. Variety, not singularity. So why do I start here? Is that space in itself is nothing without humans. It's the art of, the art we create is about the space's interaction with humans. It's important. So, the community. I hear this phrase a lot. The most pressing issue of our time, and I've already addressed it a little bit in the what, is the environment. I agree. So don't throw tomatoes or anything at me yet. I agree that a most pressing issue, I think it's both humans and environment. Because what's happening with our environment is causing a lot of the climate justice, the issues of climate migration that's already underway is happening because of our environment. We have to not think about these things separately, but together, and we are beginning to do that. We should think holistically. We should be grounded in both human and environmental issues. Architecture at its core, space at its core, is a design discipline. Access to that design is important. The second point here is that I want to set up a future, think about the future as a cultural, that we produce a cultural understanding that well-designed spaces are not just for some people, they are for all people. Because thoughtful, inspiring spaces are not superficial things. No one would say that a child in an elementary school that's well-designed, develops, is nurtured differently than a child in a poorly designed elementary school. So that should be a part of all our spaces. Our homeless centers, our millennium parks, all of the spaces, this space and affordable housing, low-income housing should all be well-designed. They truly nurture and develop the people who engage them. Think about this. I'm making a difficult analogy here. Stockholm Syndrome, where victims fall in love with their captors. I would argue that we have been held hostage by shopping malls, mediocre design. These are the things that have become so familiar to us that frankly we have developed a nostalgia to them. We control all that, but engineers, contractors, architects, we're the ones that are creating the great and the not so great. And we have to begin to say, how do we break out of this and create great design for all people? There are 120,000 registered architects. So access to design is about being in it and having access, but also access to being a designer. There are only 2% Black and African American architects. 2% out of 20, that's about 2,000 some architects. With a mixture of culture, if we're thinking about mosaics, I don't want to project what the future will be because if we have a mixture of culture working on projects, then we can't predict what those outcomes will be, the physical outcomes. How do we get to that? Is by understanding and reducing the barriers that exist from someone from getting into an architecture school, engineering school, and then going through licensure afterwards. IPAL exists. That places more emphasis or control in the hands of the students in schools. That is a program, IPAL, Integrated Path towards Architectural Licensure, is a system that helps where both the student can go through the educational process and internship process, the experience process, all at the same time, and then at graduation, they are a licensed architect. Tuskegee University is moving forward to create a system where every student that goes through their college, their university, will have to be every architect student has to be an IPAL student. Think about that in terms of the demographic change that will occur. Tuskegee is a historic black college and university, or they will make that change. Other universities are considering the same, including our own. The where. These next two go fairly quickly. What defines a building site, or what defines what is a buildable site, must change, and it is changing. Climate migration is happening, as I've said. In fact, 5 years ago, the American Planning Association in Buffalo held a conference of a national conference, but it really focused on all the Great Lakes states to discuss how do we work together to be prepared for this climate migration. We must be prepared for an influx of people. Now this sounds a little bit contradictory, and I didn't have a chance to talk to Gabe afterwards. I think we'll probably have a conversation because I don't have numbers, projected numbers on this, but his projected numbers look like they're going down. But maybe this is something that if we plan on it, we could help move numbers up. Howard University has been working with NASA looking at what it means to design a habitation on Mars. So are the building sites now only on our planet? Does it sound like a science fiction novel? I don't know. But these things are happening as we speak. Where are we with SpaceX and all these things? Where are we? I'm an architect. I'm not going to think about those things. I was taught steel by an aerospace engineer, but at Georgia Tech, that's what you do. But I don't think that I'm going to speculate on this, but just to let you know it's happening, and perhaps the future is not the future that we all that we're all discussing. Lastly, the tools of our trade are constantly changing. This is like the first time in history, the last 10 to 20 years, where the people graduating in architecture know the tools better than the seasoned architects. Think about that. They know the applications better than the architects, where before you learned how to draft in the way of the architect that you work for. It's a very different circumstance now. That doesn't mean that they know the knowledge, right? But it means that there's a different kind of playing field. So I wanted to be a little tactical here. So I've been talking bigger picture. Now, what does that mean, though, in terms of some things? Is that looking at two circumstances, how we work and how we will structure our practice. And I do this very quickly. The tools of representation, that's what we use now, right? We do drawings, we do renderings, we represent things. We're moving into, with VR, tools of experience, where a client can now think Ready Player One, where we could actually move a little bit more into thinking about space in a more creative way, where of showing the space, where a person is wearing, this is a real suit, where a person can wear it and experience the space. Now, right now, this suit costs $15,000. Plus a $10,000 glove. So we're not there, but we are getting there, where our clients, our people can really understand and feel the space they're in. The tools to design are changing. They will better connect both the physical and the digital world, the analog and the digital. Think of the very first presentation where we had the glasses and so on. There are a variety of ways that can be done. For those who haven't used DALL-E yet, look at DALL-E and how that is working, and that's still it's such infancy, but still it begins to point to where the creative professions are going to be thinking perhaps differently. My slide for how do we structure practice, all that was saying is that we must structure our practice in a way that allows for all projects, not just some, where an office could do homeless centers and millennium parks. I say that example because my office did a homeless center that won an honor award that tied with Millennium Park in Chicago. that both are places where great design is essential if you think about my discussion on mosaics. So, to end, 2052, there are 4 things that I covered here, right, for the what. The decarbonation of buildings, better symbiotic relationships between buildings, humans, and in the environment. The who, a true mosaic of people will be working with the true mosaic of communities that we have. We must push for a cultural understanding that great design, well-designed places are for all people, not just for some people. Where we should be, in at least this region, being prepared for climate migration. In other regions, we've got a region people are going to want to move to when you compare what's happening in other locations, as we're already seeing with weather. So this is something we must be prepared for. And are there on and off-world possibilities? Got to be provocative some places. And the how. The tools of our experience, the tools that offer experience versus tools of representation. We are moving towards, and I think we should be leaping into, the tools of experience. It connects very much to what Kim was talking earlier about. And then lastly, the way we're designing, the way we're thinking about space needs to bridge, needs to connect both the analog and the digital world. It's not either or anymore. It has to be both and. So variety and both and, not singularity. Or maybe not. Uncertainty. Have no idea if any of this will actually come to pass, right? So thank you so much. I truly enjoyed being in front of you today. Thanks so much.